Hello everyone, I am Srikant Mallela and I belong to the Indian Railway Traffic Service and you're watching me on Delhi Knowledge Track. This video is going to take you through an overview of the Indian Railway Traffic Service and what are its roles, responsibilities and opportunities so that you can take a better decision in terms of the preferences when you need to fill your DAF. Railways is something that everyone has had experienced at some point of time in some form or the other. And it has had a very rich and varied history starting in 1853 when the British established it for their own economic and political reasons. And while during our preparation, you'll also know how much important role it had played in the Indian national movement, bringing together all the political leaders of that time. The scale of railways, just to give you an understanding, is at one point of time, the railway budget used to be much larger than the general budget. So that shows how important it was for the government of India at that point of time. And coming back to the present day, I'll just give you three numbers in order to understand what the scale of operations are. Indian Railways runs more than 20,000 trains each day and transporting over 25 million people and about 3 million tons of freight every day. And no wonder it is known as the lifeline of the nation. Now, in order to run this huge organization in terms of scale and scope, it has been organized into various services. There are 3 civil services and there are 5 engineering services which man the posts of the Indian Ministry of Railways. Coming to the civil services, there is the Indian Railway Traffic Service, Indian Railway Account Service and the Indian Railway Personnel Service, which constitute all the civil cadre posts of the Indian Railways. Now, some of you might be having this question, what has railways got to do with civil services? Well, there is a British legacy to it, but at the same time, if you understand the transportation sector and railways in particular, it has got a lot of characteristics of what is known as a public good. And imagine in a country like ours, a worker from one corner of the country can travel to the other corner in search of economic prospects for merely a few hundred rupees. And not only this, in terms of freight transport, the amount of multiplier effect that the railways has is huge for our macroeconomy. Now, coming specifically to the Indian Railway Traffic Service or IRTS, there are 2 primary roles that the IRTS officers have. One is of operating. Operating simply means running of trains, both passenger and freight trains, in terms of scheduling them, in order to make sure that all the resources are there in terms of locomotives, in terms of coaches and wagons, in terms of crew, in order to make sure that they run on time. The other is of commercial. Commercial means all the ticketing services, all the passenger amenities, all the outsourcing contracts, basically all the customer facing side of the Indian Railways. Additionally, the traffic service officers also have a role in safety of the Indian Railways. Now, the training begins with the Civil Services Foundation course at Mussoorie or Hyderabad or Bhopal, which you might be aware through various other videos across the board. Following which, there is a 10-week module which happens in the National Academy of Indian Railways at Vadodara, where you get an understanding of the various services and the various departments of Indian Railways, and it also creates and nurtures a bonhomie amongst all the officers of various departments. Following this, the IRTA specific training starts, and it starts with the Zonal Railway Training Institute at Udaipur, where there is an 8-week module of operating and commercial with an emphasis of safety. Following which, we come to a parent academy, which is the Indian Railway Institute of Transportation Management at Lucknow, where we get an overview of the railway policies at the various levels in terms of the national level, in terms of the zonal level. Interspread with all these classroom modules, there is a lot of field training. Field training in terms of divisional training, where you understand the operations of trains, you go visit the various stations, various yards where all the operations happen. There is a specific modules on core area training because railways move a lot of various goods and commodities like coal, like cement, food grains, all these things. So there are various modules addressing all these specific requirements. In addition to that, there are a lot of institutional part of the training. The institutional meaning where you go to various academies and institutes of various railway services and at the same time various other civil services, where you try to understand the work and nature of each other so that when you go on the job, when you go onto the field, you have a better exposure and better understanding of each other. In addition to this, there is an induction module which happens where all the services again come together after a substantial amount of training is completed, the railway services being, and they share experiences and learning and take their learning further. There is also a 1-month module at the Indian Institutes of Management, one of them, and where you get an understanding of the management aspects of the railways. There is also a foreign component, which some of you might have read in the newspapers, where this year the officers went to Germany. So Germany and Japan being the two countries where the officers generally visit in order to understand the advances of the railways across the world. Now, following the training, you get your posting. Now, Indian Railways is organized in a 3-tier level. First is at the divisional level, where all the train operations and execution happens. Over this are the zones, and at the apex level is the railway board at the ministry level. Now, you can get posted in any of these levels, but more often than not, it is at the divisional level. And the first post in operating is called Assistant Operations Manager, and in commercial, it is known as Assistant Commercial Manager. Now, one of the important aspects that you need to understand is that railways is a manpower intensive organization, and right from the first post, almost 200 to 500 people will be reporting, and in a matter of 6 to 7 years, almost 5,000 people would be reporting to you. So you should be comfortable and you should enjoy this kind of an environment. Then there are these posts at the zonal level which make sure that there is a coordination amongst all the divisions in terms of working and in terms of operations. And the posts at the railway board level primarily deal with policy formulation and execution, making sure that the execution happens at the zones and at the divisions. Now, in terms of opportunities, you must understand that the railways is undergoing a transformation stage where lakhs of crores of investment is being pumped in terms of capacity expansion, in terms of modern infrastructure, modern systems, modern rolling stock. You might all be aware of the bullet train in terms of the dedicated freight corridor, all these new things that are coming up. And if you join the railway traffic service at this point of time, you will be a part of change. You will be making sure that the railways is ready for tomorrow. Now, as a civil service and as a part of railways, you will also be having opportunities to go into various PSUs of railways. The primarily that you might be aware is IRCTC. Now, IRCTC is doing fantastic work in terms of IT enablement of various services, various amenities. You have the back-end CRIS, which is the Railway Information Systems. You have CONCOR, which does the containerization movements. There are several other PSUs which are under the Ministry of Railways, in which you have an opportunity to work. Now, beyond this, the entire transportation sector is there. Now, the roles that I described very briefly, the best part of that is that all these are execution-oriented roles. And I would go so far to say that this is one of the most execution-oriented services of the Indian government, where you take decisions, numerous decisions on a day-to-day basis, which impact thousands of people. And the impact of those decisions are seen right in front of your eyes. Now, in terms of opportunities and career progression, don't be under the impression that you will have to work specifically in these roles throughout your career. Railways has a lot of PSUs under its wing, like for example IRCTC, which is doing tremendous work in terms of passenger amenities and in terms of ticketing. Then you have a lot of transportation oriented like CONCOR, which does containerization movement. So you have these opportunities up for grabs, and beyond this, as a civil service, as a central service, you have opportunities to go on deputation to various other ministries. It is an interesting fact to note that a lot of ports are being manned by IRTS officers, in fact even at the chairman level. Well, no service is without its downsides, and the downside of IRTS comes from the very nature of the train operations, which run 24/7, and thus more often than not you need to be available on call at all points of time, because there might be an incident or any sort of disaster or decision that needs to be taken at any point of time. Now, in terms of perks, there are a lot of hygiene parameters that are taken care of by the railways. Now, hygiene meaning all your accommodations, you get one of the best accommodations across the country. You have the sporting infrastructure, which is one of the best. As you might be aware, railways encourages and nurtures a lot of sporting talent in this country. At the same time, you get to travel, you are provided with several passes to travel, you and your family. So these are the perks that one might, in terms of making sure that you have a comfortable stay during your entire service. The interesting part of the training is that you get to travel a lot, and a lot of services have what is known as Bharat Darshan, but that happens over a period of 1 or 2 months. Whereas what IRTS goes through, I would like to term it as Bharat Avshoshan, meaning absorption, because you tend to spend a month or two at different states. So that gives you an opportunity to not only travel and visit a lot of places, but also understand the culture of those people there. And a lot of time when the travel happens, we travel in a coach, and a dedicated coach, which also allows a lot of bonding, a lot of celebration happening all across at the same time, making sure that everyone is enjoying and being there for each other. Now, another question that many aspirants might be having is what ranks get this service? Well, getting is not a correct word because many actually opt for this service. I, for that matter, in CSE 2015 got a rank of 388, for which I would have got Indian Revenue Service. But not only I, but many others in my batch had opted for IRTS above IRS, primarily because of interest in terms of this kind of nature of work, in terms of operations, where this is primarily a field-oriented work. So if you are someone who actually likes this kind of a role and responsibilities, you should definitely give it a higher preference compared to what you would have normally done on a peer pressure basis. Having got an overview of what the roles are, now a question that many might be having is what kind of background or profiles would be better suited? Well, there is no such thing. All from humanities, liberal arts to even medical sciences have done extremely well in this service. All that is needed, all the technical know-how that is needed is adequately provided during the training. And beyond this is all about managing people, managing resources and managing time. So this is a broad overview of the service. So when you are going forward in order to make a preference, I would urge you to speak to as many officers, as many who are in the service as possible in order to get a better understanding of all the services and take an informed choice. Now, you're watching this on Delhi Knowledge Track, and if you like this video, do like it, share it with everyone, and make sure that you watch their other videos as well. Thank you so much.